studio buddies doing a podcast with a little gay guitar. Hello, welcome to Studio Buddies podcast with me, Simon, and
Jamie.
And today we're gonna Jamie's got a special helper today to help her in the background, and today we're going to be discussing the things that we've learnt in university.
Indeed we are.
Which is interesting because we haven't really discussed this, in long form, so that we know what it is that we are going to discuss, whether it's things we've learnt that are good or things we learnt that are bad or things we were hoping to learn.
Yeah, so, I feel like this one is going to be quite improv, to be fair. Then again,
yeah.
I think all of them are, so...
They are. It's winging.
We don't script anything.
No.
Should we...
But you haven't noticed.
No, not noticed at all. How should we start this? Should we do like the good things that we've learnt first, and then maybe like the more negative stuff?
Yeah, maybe that sandwich thing would be good, where it's like good things, bad things, and then if we can squeeze in more good things. Just because as much as it's probably more bad things than good things, maybe I'm going to try and be as positive as possible if I can.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you can do.
So, okay, because I had a moment earlier where I considered things from the first year which I learnt, which I know the first year's easy for me to mine the things that I learned because it's where I learn anything really. And the first thing that I think I learned in the first year was to properly digest perspective, 1 and 2 point perspective, which is very basic and a lot of people know how that works, and there's tons of things online about how to plot out your perspective with the vanishing point and the horizon line and all of these things, but I really didn't know that stuff and I was winging it. I think I mentioned it in an earlier podcast, but that is definitely something which I learned in the first year, so that's worth its weight in gold to me now.
Yeah, I think probably the same for me on that one as well. Like I knew a bit about perspective because of when I did my foundation in college, but I feel like it was explained better in uni, and I appreciate that quite a bit. Yeah. It's
just, it depends when it comes to you, isn't it? Because sometimes you can be taught something and you just don't really take it in because it's not really relevant for that point in your life.
Yeah.
And it's not like uni it was, but it was just, it seemed to go in at that point. And I think it was because I was a bit cocky about knowing perspective to an extent. And when it came to actually doing it by the rules, I really didn't know the rules, and now that I know them I could show somebody else how to go through it. Just very basic, nothing too technical. And then I just want to mention, for perspective, I don't know if you've seen this episode of the Draftsman podcast, but they talk about some perspective rules which we went nowhere near, like a carried horizon line for if you're tumbling in animation. And Marshall discusses this because he's the perspective guy, and he says that if you're tumbling over in animation and you want your character to be rolling and the vantage point of the audience is the character's point of view, then the horizon tumbles with them, which means all the vanishing points go with the character's tumble, which is something that we'll probably never use. But if you ever did want to do a skewed perspective, and tilt your camera a bit, so that all the angles are twisted, it'd be worth remembering that all of the horizon vanishing points and everything tumbles with the character. Or just rewatch that Draftsman episode. I don't know which one it is, but I will try to find a link, and I'll try to put up an image on the podcast if I can in this episode. So yeah, that's a good one. The next one I'll mention is the painting tutor showing us the not varnishes, I always say varnishes, glazes, which was using acrylic inks, and the concept behind it was to paint everything dark as thin as possible and everything light a little bit fatter, a little bit heavier, and when you do that you then put a acrylic ink glaze over the whole painting, and then you repaint the light areas again, especially the most prominent shapes, and then you get this kind of sense of depth from the painting which wouldn't have been there without that use of the acrylic ink to kind of fade everything on an even level without the lightest parts, which are obviously heightened because you're painting back over them. And
Yeah.
that's probably quite a basic principle, but I'd never considered acrylic inks. I don't even think I knew about them. So that was something that I learned as well.
It's the same with scumbling as well, with acrylic inks, like how to scumble with a white one. That was interesting, and I have used that since. To be, at first, when he'd mentioned it, me being ignorant, I was like, well, I don't think I'm ever going to use it. But I did, and it works, so hats off to him. Yeah.
And to you. That's not that easy, because I mean, I've still got that ignorant side of me going, I'm not going to scumble, you can scumble. And I've kind of still got that resistance to doing it, because I think there's other ways of achieving it, and I should probably just experiment so that you've been through that process and you know the benefits.
Yeah.
You've probably taken in certain things from the painting lessons which I've either not been to and seen. There was some in the second year which I didn't see, I didn't know about, and there's other things that I think I just didn't practice because I've got this block between me and accepting certain things that feel more like craft than art. So I've really got that, I don't know, kind of stuck in my ways mindset, I suppose.
Yeah.
But yeah, can you think of anything else which is good from early on that you learned?
I've got quite a few.
Okay, go for it.
So the first one that I remember was the acrylic grounds. So for people that don't know, before you do a painting, it's like putting a base of a colour underneath. And I'd never even considered that. And since learning about it, I have been doing it because, if there are spots where you've missed a little bit of paint, it's not, I wouldn't say it's not as noticeable, but it looks more intentional to see a colour underneath, like you've done it on purpose and it wasn't just like a tiny speck that you've just missed. So that was quite good. What was the other ones? There was quite a few.
Let me just piggyback on that for a second, if you don't mind, just to
Yeah.
so that I can get out. That's something which I knew to a small extent through my brother, because he told me about using an orangey brown, and that was his preference. He said to me, use an orangey brown underpainting, because he said that's the most successful, vibrant colour that he's seen used. So I did. I used that, and then when it came to using other ground colours, I was unfamiliar with the effect that would occur, but at the same time I knew the principle generally of the ground painting. So it was a good lesson to do in full, as opposed to having part of the idea in your head and not the full thing.
Yeah. I think the other one, what you said about the glazing and scumbling, then kind of like a hack, I suppose, is like, instead of trying to attempt to paint a straight edge, just put a straight edge against it. That was good. I haven't really used that one because I don't think a lot of straight edges tend to show up in my work, and I'm not like 100% keen on how it looks, because I don't know, I like my paintings to have like unstraight edges and stuff, because I feel like it adds a little bit of humanity to it, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that was quite interesting. Learning about what is it called? Doing, like, before you do a painting, this was in the second year, before you do a painting, kind of mapping out the painting on like a piece of paper. Do you remember that?
Is that going to be the transmitter-receiver process, or is that something else?
No, it was when John was in his studio space and he was like talking us through it and then actually doing it alongside us. It was kind of like you know, if you want to use like a certain colour and you're not sure how it's going to work, to kind of do a really rough, like just layering colours on top of each other kind of thing.
Is that where he started to draw with a biro on his sketchbook? He was doing really rough things there, because that's the only one where I remember him doing it along with us. I don't know, I might have missed a few, I'm not sure if I missed many, but that one I really quite like as far as developing the image using really loose. As soon as he said you can be really loose, I'd start that and then would tighten it up naturally, and I couldn't help it, you know, but try to finish the picture when I should really leave things loose and messy in a sketchbook, so the ideas are still there to generate. And I've got a bad habit of saying, well, it's starting to look good, so I want to refine it and refine it. You know, it's a problem. But yeah, I know what you mean as far as doing that in his sketchbook. As far as, was it when you said reframing? It's not using the. You don't mean using the kind of mounts to find part of the painting in the picture, then? No.
No, that was the Viewfinder thing, which I enjoyed that as well. I did actually use that. So the whole Viewfinder thing, for people that haven't done it, it's where you literally take like 2 right angle pieces of cardboard on something that you've previously done and take like sections of it. And I did enjoy that because it did help me generate ideas, and I thought that the elements of pieces that I've already done were quite interesting, so it made it easier for me to do like small thumbnails and stuff, to kind of like further develop my work, which by the way is something I'm very bad at. I've mentioned this before in an episode somewhere. I think it might have been the first episode, where I essentially work backwards, and people don't like that. So it kind of, if anyone out there also works backwards, I definitely recommend the Viewfinder thing, because even if you do it at the very end, you can make it look like you'd planned it all along, and then they can't have a go at you.
It's nice to have that few steps, isn't it? Even if it's you've already finished it, to have earlier rendered, because I've done it in the right order, but even when I've done it afterwards, like what you're saying, where you finished a piece and then you think, well, I better do a sketchbook version of this, and then better do a loose version as if I'm working it out. Having those rougher versions of it, I really quite like, and I think that really adds something to the sketchbook, even though it's dishonest in the way that it's not how you develop the idea. It's still a nice process. It's a shame that it's not easier to make an image 3 times and you've got to do it by force, really.
I thought it was beneficial to me, like when I wanted to use different materials and stuff like that, because I feel like I'm very rigid in the materials that I use. Like, I always go back to the same ones, and I don't want to commit myself to a big piece in a material that I'm uncomfortable in. So it makes it easier for me if I can do like tiny little thumbnails of things that I find relatively interesting, that I've already done before, to kind of make myself feel more comfortable with it. And it did create some quite interesting imagery, I think. Is that related to the mood boards as well, or is that something that you've done more this year than last year? Because I saw that you'd done those on your gallery. Yeah, I did it for the start of this year because I noticed that he'd set up the task, and not many people did it, and I thought that I might as well just try, because I'd prefer to do it and prove that I've done it than not do it. So I did it anyway, and they were quite interesting, and it gave me some ideas, like if I wanted to produce more large scale pieces based on the thumbnails that I did. I haven't gotten around to doing any of those yet, but yeah, it helped, especially because I work backwards. So
yeah, that's a good tip. Oh, nice. So that's some good positive. Well, I don't mean to move over to the negative yet, because we're still in early days, I suppose, of the discussion. So trying to stick with positive things. Let me think. Okay, I've really actually got to think now, because this isn't something where I've already worked out. Let me think. What did I actually learn as far as I think? Do you remember I don't know if you remember in the first episode we talked about expectations of making friends in university, and I just assumed that it'd be a rivalry where people would be competitive at who's the best at drawing or painting or sculpting or whatever we were doing, and that wasn't the case. And instead I learned that let me think how to word this really, because it's not that I learned that you're going to meet people that you're going to love, because that's probably obvious and true, because you meet a lot of people and some of these people you want to know for the rest of your life, but it's kind of, I learned a lot about caring about art that I wouldn't have really spent as much time investing in otherwise, because some of my friends are really into the other aspects of art than I am, and that makes me invest in their interests because I care about them and their direction and vision for work. So I learned a lot about empathizing with other aspects of art making, I suppose, which is quite nice. Just really, it's not installation art necessarily, but it feels like it's related to installation art, where it's in the realms of objects that are not very figurative but kind of remind you of certain things, and they're just evocative pieces where it's something which I think I'd feel silly doing myself, because I'd feel like I'm going through the motions to make it look like something which fits in that genre, as opposed to what I do where I feel like I belong in a part of a discipline of trying to get figurative work better, really.
Yeah.
So that's been something which I've learned as far as learning art through other people's interests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timer.
Okay.
I think, going off what you said, it was something that I noticed first in foundation. I gravitate more towards still life now, and I remember when I was in A level, and it might have been like the first half of my foundation year, I never really understood why people did still life, and like, this is going to be a completely honest thought right now. Judge me all you want, it's fine. I hold my hands up because it was a dumb thought. But the thought in my head was, why would you just want to paint objects? That's boring. Yeah. And during foundation, and I think it could have been because of the fact that I understood more about painting techniques and processes and stuff like that I started to really appreciate it. And when I did my first year of uni, the paintings and stuff that I did weren't really interested in me, and you could kind of tell, like, I wasn't massively involved in it. It just didn't resonate with me, and I didn't enjoy it. But then towards like the second year, when we were all in our homes and stuff like that, the only thing I could really do was still life, and I had decided to create narratives within the still life objects that I was using to tell a story. It was only through uni that I started to realise why people did it and why people still do it. Because, like I said, I'll be honest, my thought was, this is boring. Like, there's not a lot going on there. Congrats, you've painted an object. Good for you. And now that is my entire, like, body of work. And I appreciate that, because I feel like it nipped my ignorance, like, and just threw it away. I do like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, you do really well at that. I noticed in the second years when I started to see your ability come through, because I think I've mentioned before, in the first year we got along because, you started talking to me when we were outside having a break.
Yeah. And
I just thought, oh, you're friendly. You're definitely very forward with being kind of, open to conversation, which I wasn't, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
Or I don't know how I was approaching it, but I remember being inside my head a lot, considering what was going on in uni and outside of uni. And you were just kind of, rolling with conversation and telling me about, who you were. And it was great. And then I looked at your work and I was like, cool, I'm glad that you're engaging with the painting. But I couldn't tell what you were able to do or not.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is probably just the, beginnings of trying to shape who you are as a person. for all of us. Because the paintings I was doing in first year was just, well, it was based on the, it's based on the trip that you'd taken us on, the walk around town,
Yeah.
where we kind of, it was the picture plane idea where you're supposed to, that's another thing that we learned, the picture plane where it's a shop window, so you've got stuff walking in front of a shop window, you've got the graphics on the shop window,
Yeah.
you've got the stuff inside the shop, and that was, you know, the levels of depth and the layers, which, I mean, it's related to the glaze and all that stuff, but at the same time it's the principle of the picture plane being the surface that you're painting on,
Yeah.
showing those layers of depth and communicating that. So that's all that I had going on in the first year, was just going through the motions and painting something, what was it, 7 or 8 times, and going, oh my god, I don't want to do this image anymore.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really do it just to see the time, but it was just trying to show I'm willing to paint to learn something. And then in the second year, when I really struggled at home to kind of produce work, and I was instead making videos, which I'm back to now, and it was kind of weird videos, which I'm probably back to now, I don't know. And then, you know, that's where you started to produce these paintings of like your fingers and your skin and your kind of all sorts of things from around, where I was like, this is showing that you've got a great understanding of kind of form and tone and all kinds of things. And because I knew that you were colourblind and just other things about you, I was just like, this is unbelievable.
Thank you.
You really got a lot to offer. Yeah, it was great.
I feel like I wasn't
really nice.
as involved in the first year. I don't know why. Part of it was due to my mental health not being great anyway. And I feel like I wasn't engaging well because I was so used to foundation, which was very strict in what we did. Like we had to learn a lot of techniques and processes, how to do things, loads of printmaking, perspective, using different mediums and stuff like that. And then when we did our first year of uni, it was, here's a piece of string, measure how big the building is. So I think in my mind, I was kind of seeing it as like, well, I can't be bothered doing what they want me to do. So I wasn't engaging that way. And then my mental health got really bad. And then as soon as it got to the second year, because we had a fair bit more freedom of what we could do, like they would give us prompts and stuff like that, so a frame of reference which is like a word that you try and base your work around. Because there was that kind of freedom, I was able to paint again. Because I remember like when I was in college, and not so much when I did my foundation, I was primarily in print then, I wasn't even in the room. But when I did my A-levels, painting was what I really enjoyed, and I kind of got out of the flow of that. And I feel like the first year of uni didn't really encourage it. But this year, and second year last year, I feel like I'm enjoying it a lot more now, and I feel like I've gotten better at it, which is obviously what everyone wants. And I'm quite happy with where I'm at. Like, I do still struggle because of my aphantasia and the fact that I'm colourblind. But I found ways around it, and I'm enjoying it. That was another thing that I've learned as well. If you ever want to use black for anything, probably don't. Unless you're intentionally using black, probably no.
Yeah.
I have used black intentionally on the painting called My Creepy Children. There will be an image somewhere. Very proud of that piece. I intentionally used black there. But that was a choice that I made. For the other painting that I've just finished, Childhood Memories, I think that's what I called it. Also another image, probably. The background of the reference is very dark, and one of my tutors came in and he was looking at the reference and what I was working with. He's not a painter, by the way, he's a sculptor. And he went, Jamie, what colour are you doing in the background? I was like, I don't know, I haven't got that far yet. And he was like, don't do black. Do like a dark blue or a dark purple or a dark red, otherwise it'll look dead. So me being me, I did purple because that's my thing. And it worked a lot better, it really did, and I'm very glad that he taught me that, otherwise I'd be slapping black on there like it's no one's business, and it'd look dead. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
That is something which I knew before going into uni, but uni forced me to use black in certain paintings.
Yeah.
The negative space painting, the painting tutor got us to do, the large one, which, to be honest, made me like black a little bit, because we painted the A1 page black first, and then I think it was that, wasn't it? And then we were painting the negative space white, or was it the opposite way around? No, it was, it was. We was painting it black.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then painting white for the negative space.
Yeah.
So that the actual subject was black, which, images, and then, which I quite liked. I even did a sketchbook, another image based on the photo references that I took of the annoying sculpture that we had in our studio space, because I thought if there's anything that's to come of that, it should be drawings or paintings. So the first one was a A1 painting, and the second one was a A4 drawing with marker pens. But I did enjoy that black, and as much as I knew not to put black into paintings beforehand, it was for the benefit that you can get of using really dark brown or purple or blue, and then having other things that are darker or lighter in that darkness, because that's far more interesting than having just a void behind the subject, which is really not great. Should we transition into the negative things that we learned, because we're kind of teetering on the edge a bit at the moment?
Go for it. I think I've run out of positive things. Now.
We'll have to recharge some positives for the end.
I've exhausted positivity. Oh God, I don't have anything left for the end.
You might think of something, don't worry, we'll squeeze loads of negative into this section, and then we'll have a couple of positives at the end. So negative. The first one which I think of, which I was going to send a message to Peter Draws, because he's just started art school.
Oh.
And I thought, if there's anything that I don't know if it's fine art, but it's art school where he's doing metal welding sort of stuff. Or metal kind of pouring molten, I don't know, metal sculptures of some sort. Looks interesting, looks weird, but interesting. And he's doing sculptures and things, so he seems to be diving straight into it. What I was going to say to him is, it's not a good thing, it's not a nice thing, but one thing which I've definitely learned from university is that if there's anything that bothers you, if something happens where you're thinking this is bad, and I need to speak to somebody about it, speak to them, but send an email as well, because when it comes time to saying this happened and nothing was done about it, they're going to say, where's your evidence? And your evidence needs to be the email, because without that email, you've not really got a paper trail of what's happened, and it's he said, she said, and or they said, or whatever. It's anecdote or whatever you call it, where it's not really backed up by in writing statements. So it's not a good thing, but it's something where even if you love everyone in university, send an email saying, I was concerned when this happened, it seemed like it wasn't fair on so and so, such and such said such and such. Maybe it would be best if they made amends. I think everyone would be more comfortable if it was a more fair and equal environment. Or something like that, where you're not being too, heavy-handed on, I want this isn't right. Just more, we need to kind of smooth this over. Because when that doesn't happen, things can really go off the rails. And that's what I learned, is that back it up with an email. So that's the first one of I learned, and it's not good.
I learned that not everyone can draw a chair. And it's okay to not be able to draw a chair, because not everyone can. This was a student that had said that she didn't know how to draw a chair in perspective, and the response was, well, not everyone knows how to draw a chair. Or not everyone can draw a chair. I just don't think he could draw a chair.
No, he couldn't. I don't think he knew how to help her either, because his response in full was, sometimes when you don't draw things right, it looks quite interesting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but she asked you what she can do to try and bridge that gap between wonky chair and slightly more, realistic, in perspective, balanced chair.
Yeah.
And he just said, live with it. That's basically, to summarise, it's like, get used to it.
Yeah.
You're the wonky chair girl. Enjoy it. Which broke my heart, as you can imagine, because I'm all about perspective and whatever. So, yeah, I feel you. That's something where we both learnt that fine art means if you don't know how to draw a chair, that's you.
Yeah.
That's your style. Painful. That's not good. Okay, my turn. Let's go back and forth. I learned. It's so pleasant doing the negative stuff because it's all well and good going, I learned this good thing from uni. I learned this bad thing from uni. I learned that tutors, or I should say tutorials, aren't the same in university as they are online. So when they're saying, we've got a tutorial, and I'm like, oh, we've got a tutorial. Oh, that just means we're sitting here and I'm saying, I want you to make this. Here's my PowerPoint presentation on other versions of this that you need to make. And when I sort of said, are you going to show us how to do that? It's like, no, it's not a workshop. Now, workshops aren't workshops either. Workshops are only tutorial workshops when that's what they are. Because we've had workshops before where it's just talking again.
Yeah.
It's just like a meeting, just another version of a meeting. So I learned that language is a little bit more flexible in university compared to what we're used to it online, where a tutorial means I'm going to show you how to do this and then you do it your own way, but based on how I've shown you, and you'll be good. So if you want a good tutorial,
YouTube.
go online. Go see. Yeah, YouTube's great for tutorials.
And there's a difference between tutorial and one-to-one. A one-to-one is you and your tutor where they tell you things that they want you to do, and a tutorial is where it's different to a group crit as well. And sometimes the one-to-one's called a tutorial, sometimes there's other people there as well, and you kind of just talk about your work, and they all kind of sit there like, yes, love that. It's very like, you need to be able to decode their language, and it fluctuates every day. They could say tutorial, and then all of a sudden the tutorial turns into a one-to-one or a group crit. So it varies, and between tutors as well. It varies between tutors that you have, which makes it very confusing and hard to track. Yeah,
absolutely. It makes it hard for you to find your balance or to orientate your way through what your work is supposed to be getting at or delivering, because one tutor will tell you one thing and the other tutor won't even know and won't find that really important or relevant.
Yeah.
So it can be quite frustrating that way. There's a real disconnect. But that does remind me of another one where I did learn to research the ideology of the tutors at your university, which I still find that a lot to ask of someone who's going to university, to say, oh great, this uni looks good, everyone says it's great, I know people who've been there, they said it's good, but wait a minute, let me look up who the tutors are there now and what their discipline is and what their ideology is, so that I know I'm going to the right school, because that just didn't dawn on me at all. But because I didn't do that, I'm at a school where the ideas and the philosophy is completely different than what my sensibilities are. Really.
Yeah. Is that recording? Yeah? Okay.
Sorry, 1 second. I was just checking mine. When you said, is that recording, I thought, uh-oh, it's mine? Because if it's not, I'm screwed. Yeah.
I have another one. Wait, has the thought just been thrown into the abyss?
Oh no! Was it a bad one?
Oh, it's an ADHD moment. Oh, now's not the time. Oh, God. Wait, what was it?
Do you know if it's good or bad? Was it a bad one?
It was another bad one.
Yeah.
God! It It was right there. It was right there, and now it's gone.
Do you want me to throw in a bad one so that you can have time to remember?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, a bad thing that I learned was, well, I mean, I'm thinking more recently now. A bad thing that I've learned is that the degree show is going to have a theme, which I think sounds like a prom.
That's only for the advertising, though.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, apparently it's for the advertising and like how they're going to decorate the corridors or something. So our actual exhibition space isn't going to have any of that theme in there, because when we had that meeting, well, it wasn't the meeting, it was the creative jam. Yeah. One of the tutors, he was like, have you got an idea for the theme? And I was like, well, is our exhibition gonna be this theme? And he was like, well, no, because then you'd have to tailor all of your work to that specific theme. And I'll be honest, I looked at him and I went, well, then I don't really care.
Yeah, good for you, because I just thought, what is the point? I mean, there was 3 ideas that I'd heard of, and I can't say them on camera because one of these ideas, someone who did these ideas might hear it, and I don't want them to be upset.
Yeah.
But there was only one of the 3 ideas that I thought was acceptable, because otherwise they sounded a bit. One was impractical, and one was just sounded to me too. What is the nice word? It just didn't sound suitable for fine art. I need to stop raising my hands up because the Zoom meeting keeps going, you're about to raise your hand. I'm always raising my hand. Oh my God. So yeah, it just sounded unsuitable for fine art to have certain themes. And when I heard about this, I thought, this sounds like a primary school. You know, I can't kind of go along with this. It's annoying.
Yeah.
So I'm reassured to hear that it's just the advertising. But still, even for the advertising, if this theme gets through, I don't know if I want my work part of the advertising, because I don't want it in that frame of that theme. You know, so I don't know. I mean, I've got plenty of others, because that was just a random one where I thought I've got plenty of things where I'm learning things going, oh really, we have to have a theme for a degree show? Is it not just the theme of a degree show?
I remember.
Yeah.
Health and safety doesn't matter. At all. All.
No.
Like, you could have the health and safety regulator come by and, you know, be like, you can't do all of these things, and then the next week people are doing those things anyway, because apparently it doesn't matter anymore. So if you ever feel like something that you're doing in uni might violate health and safety, first of all, you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place, I'll be honest with you. Maybe don't.
Yeah.
But second, they're not going to care at all. As long as you don't do it while the inspector's there, you're fine.
Yeah.
And even if you're putting everyone else around you at risk, it doesn't matter.
You see, people are going to see this and they're going to be horrified. The truth is, this is our experience for our university.
Yeah.
And it might not be like this in everyone, but I've heard similar horror stories from Scotland down to London. I mean, not of everyone, but I've heard of different places dotted about from people who I know, people who I know, if you know what I mean. People who I know have told me people who they know are in art school and are reporting back to this person who I know. I'm trying to be so vague, that they're not having a great time based on very similar complaints to what I've been expressing. So it does seem like at least a nationwide issue as far as universities that are a bit haphazard with teaching, kind of nurturing the students' interests and kind of, you know, investing in that. And then health and safety is something where I'm not surprised to hear this, and I'm a remote student. I'm saying this kind of, I don't know if I've told you this, but I've been told off recently for calling myself a remote student. I've had an email telling me, I'm concerned that you're using the term remote student because the university doesn't have anything about remote students, so it's inappropriate for you to call yourself that. That was from one of my tutors. Thanks, tutor.
Oh.
Yeah. But you can guess which one it was as well. I don't know if you can, but I
yeah,
you can
100%.
Guess. Yeah.
I know who that is.
Yeah. So that's happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear about this kind of, you know, fast and loose with the rules. because we're all a little
Yeah.
bit life in our own hands. I mean, since first year, I remember offering a young woman my hand to get down off a desk that she was stood on to put something up on the wall. And I remember saying to her, is it all right if I'm offering you my hand? Because I didn't want to seem like, oh, madame, and seem inappropriate. And she was fine with it,
Yeah.
but I was a bit like, I don't know what's cool as far as, I already knew that I was way older than people, even if I didn't look it in the first year, I do now. And yeah, thanks pandemic, by the way. Thanks for the age, pandemic. But yeah, so at the time I was kind of like, I don't want to seem like a creeper, but I want to kind of help this young woman down from a desk. And I remember thinking, this is a health and safety nightmare. And the more mature students in the room would complain about how health and safety is, we don't need ladder training. It's like, of course you do. You can't just give someone a ladder, because it's all well and good to say, yeah, there's rungs, you walk up them and that's it, that's how a ladder works. It's not really how you're supposed to use a ladder, and that's why you're not supposed to be on desks. And it's like lifting up boxes and things. There's training for how to do that so that you don't hurt your back. And they give you that in supermarkets. And I've seen recently on Instagram a post about how to lift up boxes, and people in the comments going, this is amazing, I've never known this, and I've got a really bad back, and it's because I've been lifting wrong all my life. And I got that benefit either in Sainsbury's or Asda or some supermarket where I learned how to lift without, injuring yourself doing it. So, yeah, health and safety doesn't matter in uni.
Going off what I said about health and safety as well, if your university has designated rooms where you're supposed to do things like any kind of plaster, metalwork, stuff like that, scrap what you believe about why those rooms are there, because apparently you can do it anywhere and that's fine.
Depending on how popular you are.
Fine.
If you're in this privileged group, I'd say, because there are privileged and less privileged groups. It's a two-tier system inside and outside of the university. There are the, rich who get the benefits outside of university, and there's just the popular inside of university who seem to get benefits. I mean, it's so baffling because you think people who aren't the in-group are really willing to give as much as they can to the university for very little in return, just so that they're kind of showing that this is all goodwill. And people who don't have any of those good intentions are given every single opportunity to mess up and to not get in trouble for it. It's the weirdest experience to see. So yeah, I know what you mean. It's strange. It's easy to go mad watching it and just think this isn't real, especially with everything that's going on in the world outside of uni. To have this kind of topsy-turvy reality inside of uni doesn't help. But as you can see, what I learnt in a negative sense is quite easy to cover in university for us at the moment.
I also learned that this is for me personally, I'm not sure. There's a few people in our class that have also experienced this, and I think you have as well because we've talked about it. But unless your work is abstract, it's not good enough. So you have to be more abstract for tutors to engage with what you're doing, which I have stopped caring about. I stopped caring as soon as I felt that way, because regardless of their expectations, up until recently, I'm not an abstract painter. The only reason I say up until recently is because I can actually see from my tutor's perspective why this particular painting works the way it does, and that's how I can kind of understand it. Up until that point, and I don't think I'm really going to be doing that many other abstract paintings in the future, because I can't wrap my head around how people achieve that, and I'm not sure if that's because of my aphantasia, I don't know. But it's not my thing. And regardless of what the tutors have wanted, every single semester I'm like, nope, not doing it. And I've noticed that with other students that have more abstract stuff, they do end up with higher grades, and it is very disappointing, because I feel like the work that I do, I'm proud of it, and it's frustrating because I feel like it's not as recognised, because because it's abstract. So if you ever have any similar experiences of that, then you are not alone at all. Yeah. There's probably so many other people that feel the same way.
Absolutely. Well, I'm proud of your work. I mean, I've told you that before, that
thank you.
Seeing how far you've come along with rendering things and just making images has just been really inspiring for me to watch. And I'm a little bit jealous because I wish I would have been able to paint as much as you have and learn as much as you have. But I'm, over the moon to see you doing it, because it's just lovely to see someone who you're close with excel in those areas. And I have experienced the same thing where I feel like if I were a tutor and I were teaching mainly figurative work, let's say I wasn't teaching abstraction, I'd still notice if students gravitated towards that and try to give them the opportunity to explore that and to encourage them and to look it up myself, to educate myself, as opposed to saying, well, my speciality is performance art, so I'm going to encourage you to do performance art. And my speciality is abstract painting, so I'm going to encourage abstract painting. Or my speciality is jelly, so I'm going to go, foodstuffs is what I kind of go for, or whatever,
To be fair, though, I have noticed, because I thought that this year and last year I was going to resonate more with the painter that is our tutor. I thought I was going to resonate with him because, it might have just been me making assumptions, but I was like, we both paint, maybe he'll be interested, which I think is a fair assumption to make. But I do appreciate that the tutor I was talking about earlier, the sculptor, even though he doesn't paint, we will sit and just talk about my work, and I do appreciate him for that, because even though I'm not working within his area, he can still see what I'm trying to achieve, and even though he doesn't paint, he still offers like suggestions and stuff like that, whereas others don't. So I do appreciate that from him. It's very nice.
You could put that into what you've learnt for negatives, is that you've learnt that just because you both paint doesn't mean that you're going to be able to resonate in that area, because you might just say, well, I'm seeing things in your paintings and I shouldn't be seeing them. I'm seeing things.
And I feel like it's because our subject matter is so different and the way that we work is so different. Like, he will make tools to do his work, whereas I feel like that's pointless, because you could just use a paintbrush, because that's what it's intended for. Like, I understand if he wants to, make different marks and stuff like that, but I don't. I can... No shade on him if he ever sees this.
No.
Like, no shade at all. I like your work, it's very nice. But I feel like I can just render texture with a paintbrush, so trying to make a tool to try and achieve that same texture is pointless to me.
But again, I'd see it as the same in reverse, where if I'm the tutor who only uses paintbrushes and there's a student there who thinks that the paintbrush isn't quite enough, I would say to them, you can make your own tools. You can do things to make these marks, and you'd kind of be open to that as a tutor, because you're supposed to know more than to kind of say, I only know this way. And it was just a limit to me. It was a limitation. And I really love this tutor. I love his work and I love him as a person. But I do have the issue of I can't do these processes, and I'm tempted to tell the story of, it's your story of what you were told to paint with instead of a brush. Because I think that's shocking, and I think the podcast viewers and listeners need to know Jamie's a very good painter, and she wanted to paint large scale in oil.
Large scale, as in 6 foot by 4 foot, and the most recent one is 7 foot by 5 foot. Very big. And I think I'd made a remark about how I don't have very big brushes. However, though, I did go into the range the other day and I found a house paint brush like this.
Wow.
I could have used that ages ago. And I'm quite upset that I didn't go in there sooner. But I don't want to raise my hand. But yeah, I I was like, I don't have a paintbrush that big, and the suggestion was to paint with a mop. Anyone that's used oil paint, it's not the kind of paint that you'd use for a mop. It's too thick for that. It would waste a lot of oil paint, and oil paint's expensive. It would waste a lot of, you know, either terps or oil to thin it. It was just such a waste, and the impracticality of painting with a mop, I still don't understand it, because anyone that looks at my work isn't going to go, oh yeah, maybe Jamie will enjoy painting with a mop.
Exactly. That's the thing which hit me, is that this is not considering who you are as a painter.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was planning to do a painting with just TV static as part of my body of work, to kind of, to be honest, I don't know why I decided to do it. That's the one that turned into the abstract piece. I'll get a picture when I'm next in tomorrow, so image. I had actually bought stuff to make tools, to make different marks, and I'm talking about like different kind of sponges, scourers, different kind of cloths, and, you know, all sorts. I haven't used any of them.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I'm upset that I wasted my money, because I decided to impulsively listen to the suggestion, and the other thing is that I can do it with a paintbrush.
Yeah. Good for you for doing it, and you can't force yourself to use things that you don't want to use. Just like to stop this painting tutor from using these handmade instruments wouldn't serve his process. Just to sort of say, well, you can do it with a paintbrush, do it with a paintbrush. It wouldn't be fair to him, just like it's not fair to you or to any of us to force us through that doorway of making your own tools or buying these specific tools when you really just want to use paintbrushes and master those. So, yeah.
You ready?
There's a lot that we've learned that's not good. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So, back onto the next positive section of what we learned from university. This isn't necessarily what we learned from the uni course, but just things that we learned in the time whilst we were there.
Yeah.
And we'll try to give vague details about where we learned it from. Do you want to start, or should I start?
I don't mind. What would you prefer?
You start. If you've got one in your mind, because I've only got one so far, so I'm going to try and think of one more.
So I think the first positive that I have is the fact that my writing has gotten better. I don't think that that's because of university itself. Like, I wasn't really getting any extra support with my dyslexia. I think it was kind of just something that had gotten easier for me throughout like these past 3 years. Because I remember when I submitted the first draft for my dissertation, I was very nervous and apprehensive about it, because throughout like my entire time in education, my writing has always been the worst part for me. I do struggle to get my thoughts out coherently on paper, but I was quite proud of the marks that I got. It's probably one of the highest that I've gotten for any written document. And my tutor had said in feedback that I had organised my thoughts coherently, everything flowed, I didn't ramble, and I will admit I used Grammarly. Grammarly is my best friend. Anyone that struggles with grammar and spelling, Grammarly, you can get it for free. 10 out of 10 recommend. If you want to sound fancy, learn where a semicolon goes and then just pop one in there. Makes you sound smart. Yeah.
Nice.
I didn't learn where a comma went until I was in year 11. But I know where a semicolon goes, and I've known for quite some time. I don't know how I made that transition, to be honest. But semicolons should be your best friend, make you sound very intelligent.
Brilliant.
One of the other positives for me, I think, is the fact that my painting has improved. And I'm not sure if that like, I don't want to say that university directly impacted that, because I don't feel like well, as we've already learnt, I don't feel like we've kind of learnt too much, but that's something that's kind of improved over the 3 years, which is nice. And, you know, with the support from you, giving me criticism where criticism isn't given in uni, you're kind of like my little go-to person for tell me what's wrong with this. Yeah, so that I can improve, and that's been a really big help to me, so thank you.
Oh, nice. You're welcome. I'm unfortunately full of constructive criticisms, which are not always what people want when they show something, and it's a gate that's hard to close once it's open. But yeah, I'm glad that we've got that kind of friendship where I can offer that to you, and it's the same, you know, if you ever say anything you're like, that looks a bit off, it always hurts, but it's always like I need to digest this just so that I correct it afterwards.
Yeah. It's the only way that you'll improve though, because, you know, if you're there with your painting all the time, unless someone comes over and points it out, I find that it's hard for me to notice these kind of things. So I'm really grateful that you do it for me.
Oh, thank you.
That's okay.
No, that's nice. One of the things I learned in uni, but not from uni, was there was a student who saw me scraping paint off a palette, because I hate wasting paint drying on a palette. So I'd scrape it off into a little egg carton or a yogurt pot or something, not an egg carton, sorry, a yogurt pot, or a little, like a Yakult drink, I don't know what you call them, like a little digestive drink.
I was just trying to think of how you'd keep like an egg carton airtight. I was like, that's impressive. No. I wish I knew how.
Yeah, that's fiction. I didn't do that at all. No, it was a yogurt pot, and a yogurt pot, or like a little Yakult thing, which the Yakult thing I don't recommend putting paint in there because it's hard to scoop out because they're shaped. Anyway, that's what I was doing, and the student came up and said to me, you can just, you know, what they did was use the last bit of paint on the palette as a ground for the next surface, which I did, I think, twice, and I'm not going to do it again, but I learnt it as a trick to not waste paint. But at the same time, I'm kind of still in the process of learning how to utilise that, because in truth, what I suppose the outcome would be now, the preferred outcome, is if you have drying paint on a palette, or just leftover paint on a palette, if you then add a bit of fresh paint to mix the ground for the next canvas, that means you've got a choice, and you've got decisions you can make for what colour that ground is going to be. Whereas if you're just using whatever's left on your palette, you've not really got a choice, and more often than not it'll be brown, because you're mixing together the last of blue, the last of red, the last of yellow, and you're not mixing a real ground colour, you're just kind of doing whatever's left. But it was a good way of not wasting the paint on a palette. So if you're like me and you hate waste, then that was something that I learnt from another student.
I have a tip for you for that. This is what I do when I use acrylic, especially because obviously it dries fast. At first I would mix on a palette, but then you know, like the small pesto jars that you can get that are like this big, I will literally just mix it in a jar. Like, I'll eyeball it in a jar, kind of just mix it all together, and then I'll put a bit on the palette. Once I've used that, I'll get some more out, so then I end up saving loads of paint. I have so much green, like so many different shades of green that I used for my Fugler painting, But that's what I do. Or you can get, like, you know those really tiny jam jars? Just like try and find a load of those. If you go into a cafe, more often than not, they'll have like, bless you, they'll have the tiny jam jars that they literally just put in the bin. Ask if you can just take them, and they're amazing. I'm not good.
Good tip, thank you.
It was asking me if I wanted to raise my hand. I don't.
It's hard to ignore because we're talking over Zoom and we're recording on devices separately. What did that remind me of? That reminded me of something else, where learning from students, because I talked to students in other years, because there was I always take my little gay guitar into uni in the first year. It was always nice to kind of have and just, mess around with in the first year. It was happy days for me because I thought it's a creative space, it's full of artists, and it would be nice to be free to make a bit of twinkly noise and not really hurt anyone. And I found that there were students in other years, in the third year or doing their masters, who would come in and say, I've got a ukulele, I'm going to bring it in tomorrow, and they'd bring it in. 2 students did that, which was great. So I did learn that there is the potential for community if you open yourself up to exposing the fact that you have an interest like that. Now, I will admit, just to learning the bad thing, there's a bad side of that. As soon as that year left, there was no more openness. I mean, there was, no more with the pandemic, but there was also no more embrace of other people's interests. It was far more cliquey. This is very much part of what I learned in uni as well as a bad side, which I'm not supposed to be doing now, but it's just reminded me of how cliquey it became in university in the second year, or at the end of the first year, where people just went into their groups and they started to say passive aggressive things.
Yeah. Just
randomly, and just weird actions that you'd think are, surely I'm imagining it because it's too childish, and you're not, and it was just disappointing and underwhelming. That's something that I learned. Sorry, I've delved back into the bad stuff. It's too many bad experiences where they're little chips away, where it's like the whole structure's cracked because these tiny little chips all along the way. But, there was a good thing in there, which is if you're among decent, welcoming people, you will, find a community in different creative expressions, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Which is, again, not the university, but it was the people inside of there who were nice and friendly.
I think try and learn to, if you do have, I don't know, one person that you get on with really well, try and bounce off them. Bouncing ideas, bouncing, your progress and stuff like that. Try and kind of feed each other to keep each other motivated. I think that's quite a good one as well. Just having that one person that you can go to and kind of talk about your work and their work and try and figure out how you're going to do things and stuff like that. I think that's quite a good thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you need that. It's I must admit, when you were talking about the writing, because I did a lot of reading of really dense text in one book that was really hard to get through, I learned a lot of different words. And one of the words that I learned, we kind of discuss in the first episode of the podcast how people will say this symbolises this and this means this, and we just kind of go, well, it's just red. What's the problem? What's going on? And I love that part when I rewatched it. And I learned in the run up to the dissertation, in the kind of research, that one of the words is semiotics. And I don't know if you came across the word semiotics, but it means reading a visual, kind of reading signs in a painting. And for several pages, I'd look at different paintings, and they would say this in this painting represents this, and because this has been changed, it means this, and it symbolises, whatever, this, that, and the other. And at first, the only thing that happens in your brain is, does it though? Does it? Is that what that represents? Because I always want to just reject it and go, are you not just projecting, intellectual, interpretations onto a painting that someone's just done?
Yeah.
And you're going, the meaning and the dedication behind this brushstroke. But in truth, there's a lot of symbolism in painting which I wouldn't have noticed, and I wouldn't have. I'm not especially trained in, but I've read this one, section of a book which talks about semiotics, and that was interesting. I've discussed it with my brother, who's done art all of his life, and he'd not heard of semiotics, but it is an important part of visiting galleries and appreciating classics and especially modern art and contemporary artwork, because it's filled with things that you're supposed to be reading into and getting your own interpretation, not because there's a right and wrong interpretation, but because that's supposed to be the benefit of abstraction and of just painting where there are several things going on the canvas at once, or if it's not a canvas, then just in the subject
Yeah.
at once. Those different elements are supposed to have a reaction from the viewer, you know, and that's what semiotics is all about, is trying to read what those things are doing to you and why.
Yeah.
So I learned that word. It's something.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
I think
Can you think of anything?
my confidence with my work has improved. Definitely.
Brilliant.
And expanding on that, I feel like I'm able to talk about my work a lot more now. I'm able to kind of, I don't know, use the fancy words that they want me to use.
Yeah.
And I'm able to kind of explain my ideas and where I'm going with things in a more coherent way, which is nice because that's probably an important thing that you have to do at some point, and I'm glad that I've learned how to do it now. Yeah, so that's been good. I'm not really sure. I think that could have been purely because of the amount of times that I've heard tutors talk about my work that I'm like, oh yeah, I'll nick that, I'll steal that.
Yeah.
That's
good.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. But also hearing the painting tutor talk about his own work is kind of, you can tell how he has a real love for it, which I admire.
Yeah.
And I would like to have that for a body of work that I wish I would have created, and to be able to speak about, you know, how important it is and how it resonates with your memories or your history or, you know, things that you really engage with. And that's something which I learned from him as well, is that he really can speak for months and years and decades about his work, because he's just truly invested. And that sounds like a criticism, but it isn't. It's nice, but it's for some people it's a bit much. But because he's the only painting tutor, for me it was a little intoxicating, because I thought, it's paint. I want to hear about paint and all the delicious things it can do. So yeah, please just keep going. So that was nice. That was a nice thing to learn. So yeah, I think we're pretty much out of what we've learned from uni. Otherwise we're going to delve back into negative things, aren't we? Unless so I suppose, what would you say, how do we wrap this up? I've never struggled before to kind of segue into
well, I hope you all enjoyed listening to us ramble about positives and negatives of uni. I hope that you took something from it, and let me know how old you think I am in the comments, because you're talking about like how COVID's aged you, and I'm curious, what's my age? I'll tell you if you're right. Yeah. Did you say 30?
That's very brave of you.
My partner just said 30.
So, if her partner said 30, then surely her partner knows.
Definitely.
Or doesn't he? So yeah.
And if anyone else has any tips and stuff that they've learned from their time in uni, just, you know, leave it down below, help someone else out.
Excellent. Good tips, yeah. Good tips would be welcome.
Yeah.
And as for me, don't guess my age, cheeky buggers. And thank you for watching. This has been an episode of Studio Buddies, doing a podcast with a little gay guitar. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.